Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back to Storytime with Mrs. Duff. I'm so glad you could join me today. I know many of you are very excited about what's supposed to happen at my house tomorrow with those chick eggs hatching. They've been in the incubator for 21 days now. And actually tonight, probably some of them will start hatching. But there's always that early bird. And I want to show you. Can you see that, Mr. Trujillo? If you see the egg with a hole in it, last night we were sitting just enjoying the news, and Mr. Duff and I heard cheep, cheep, cheep from the corner of the room. And all of a sudden we saw a little bird peeping out. You could see its little beak, but I'm not sure if you can see it in that picture. So I'm not sure if we actually caught the beak sticking out of the shell. But it's working on it. We call it the early bird. It will be the early bird. It's probably going to be a rooster. Usually those bigger ones, those early ones, turn out to be roosters in the long run. So this morning I want to continue practicing. And I know this was kind of hard to see, and I am so sorry. I wish I had brighter ones, but I don't. So we're just going to go with what we have. We talked about always talking about the calendar, and it's hard to keep up with our days right now, right? Because yesterday morning I woke up and thought, oh, it's Thursday. And it wasn't. It was only Wednesday. So we are going to talk about what month it is. What month is it, boys and girls? April. That's right, because we had January, February, March, and April. And we haven't gotten to go to school during the month of April. And usually we have all kinds of exciting things that we do in kindergarten. We have exciting stories, exciting lessons, exciting things we learned. All of our letters and our numbers up to 20. So we're just working on a lot of fun stuff now. We're learning to read and put all of those letters together. If you are in first grade or second grade, you've already been doing that for a while. So you've been working on even harder things, maybe even double-digit subtraction. It's pretty exciting, huh? Now, today is Thursday. Can you say the days of the week with me, boys and girls? Are you ready? Stand up if you want to. Absolutely. Ready, set? You bet. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's not very exciting, is it? Let's sing it. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There are 7 days, there are 7 days, there are 7 days in a week. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. There are 7 days, there are 7 days in a week. And today we're actually at the very bottom of April. I don't know if you can see that, but it is April the 30th. That is the last day in April. And then we marked on our calendar that tomorrow is hatching day, which is actually May 1st. But I think we're going to have an early bird hatch today. So that's pretty exciting. And I will put that on my Facebook page, Storytime with Mrs. Duff. So if you want to watch that and see those new chicks as they hatch, you can go to that, and I'll kind of keep putting updates on as we get more chicks. Now, I have all kinds of wonderful things right over here in a box, and I have something right here in this jar, and I'm going to bring it up really close because it's very hard to see. I'm going to take the lid off, not because you need to see, but because I think that oxygen needs to maybe get in there. This morning, right before I came, I went outside, and I looked in the mud puddle by my house, and guess what? There was no water in it. And I looked in the thing where the water meter is, because sometimes there's water down in there, and we have to fish it out to read the meter. There was no water in it. So I went to my neighbor's house, and right next to his driveway, he has a ditch with just a little bit of water. And I went out, and I thought, there's no way I'm going to find these. But I went in there, and I found these little tadpoles. Can you see those? Those little tadpoles kind of floating around. I don't know if you can really see them. They're kind of funky-looking tadpoles, so I don't know what they're going to turn into. But they are tadpoles. I did look at them. But they have big eyes, and they swim around. Sometimes tadpoles are in ditches. Sometimes tadpoles are in ponds. Sometimes they're in lakes. But when I was a little girl, we used to clean out our swimming pool every summer. We had a great big swimming pool. And I think that when my dad started building it, he thought, it's just not big enough. It's not big enough. It's not big enough. So he built a big old hole in the ground. And tadpoles would get on top of the cover that we would put on in the winter. And the frogs would find somewhere to lay their eggs. Well, they don't usually lay eggs in water with chlorine, but there was no chlorine in the water because it had been all winter. So they laid their eggs in that top that went down on the swimming pool. And every time that we cleaned off that top, my dad would put a pump on there, and that pump would suck that water in those tadpoles, and he would suck it out from the back, and it would go down the hill, and the tadpoles would just kind of swim on down the hill through the water in a little stream that went all the way to our pond. And then we could go down and look at the pond. But I wasn't allowed to go to the pond by myself. Raise your hand if you are allowed to go to a pond by yourself. You probably shouldn't. And here's why. Because there's lots of mud and there's lots of things out of the ponds that are kind of dangerous. Now, ponds are wonderful places to be. Ponds are places we can find tadpoles, and we can find crawdads or crawfish. They are places that we can find fish. We can find turtles there, and maybe even some cool bugs. But there's one thing that might be at a pond that could be kind of scary. And actually, the other day, my mom and dad were cleaning out their pool, and by their pool, not even at their pond, but by their pool, there was a big pile of leaves. And your parents might tell you, don't play in leaves, especially this time of year, because animals get really cold in the winter, and they find somewhere warm to sleep. And my mom started moving the leaves, and all of a sudden, guess what happened? A snake jumped out of those leaves and bit her on the ankle. And it made her really, really sick. She had to go to the hospital, and they had to give her special medicine called anti-venom. And it was kind of a cool thing, though, because people at the hospital had never seen a snake bite. They didn't really know what to do. So she's all better now, but she wanted me to warn you that if you go down to a pond or if you're going around where there's been water, don't mess around with leaves and stuff because it could be kind of dangerous. You could have good snakes or bad snakes, and there are a lot of good snakes out there. When I had a chicken coop at my house, we liked one of the snakes that was out there because he would eat all the mice and any critters that were coming around our chicken coop and any bad snakes. But he was also there to protect. So we would just kind of let him have a few eggs every once in a while and hang out. He was a big black snake. But if you see a snake, you should never pick it up, whether you think it's a good snake or a bad snake. So that's kind of my announcement today. I just wanted you guys to be aware there are snakes out there right now. We want to watch out for those because when we want to go down and we want to look at a pond or we want to look at some water or be around some water, we want to be safe. So my story today is about a little boy named Sam. Sam's grandpa had a great big pond out in the middle of his cow pasture. And every time Sam went to his grandparents' house, Sam's brother and sister, they were a little bit older, so they might ride a bike or go play on the swing set, or they might go in the house and just hang out and watch TV. But every time Sam went to his grandparents' farm, Sam wanted to go to the pond because he wanted to see all the wonderful, exciting things that were there in the pond's ecosystem. Can you say ecosystem? Ecosystem. Very good. That's a long word. Lots of syllables. Let's say that again. Ecosystem. That's 4 syllables, isn't it? An ecosystem is where all the things live together. Well, Sam was really excited to go to the pond every time, and he would get to his grandpa's house and he'd say, "Grandpa, can I go to the pond today?" And Grandpa'd look up at the clouds and he'd say, "Oh, I think it's a little cloudy to be going to the pond today." And Sam would go off and play on the swing set or ride the bikes with his brothers and sisters. Or he'd go out and pick the garden with Grandma. But then, the next time they would go, Sam would be all excited and he would go up to his grandpa and say, "Grandpa, can we go to the pond today? And Grandpa'd say, oh, I got a duck sitting on some eggs out there. I don't think we want to disturb her today. And Sam would go off and snap beans with Grandma on the front porch, or he would hang out and play with his brother and sister and ride the bikes all around or swing on the big swing set. The next time Sam went to Grandma and Grandpa's house, he was so excited because he just knew Grandpa was going to let him go to the pond. It was his favorite place to go, and he came that day, and he had a net with him. A net, just like this one. Oh, and a bucket. Had a net and a bucket, kind of dirty-looking net and bucket. Got it out of his garage. And Sam wanted to go down and catch something in the pond. But guess what Grandpa said? Well, it's been raining and it's a little bit muddy out there. This went on and on and on. And one day, Grandpa said, there might be snakes out there that could bite you, and you just have flip-flops on. So the next time Sam came to Grandpa's house, Sam wore long pants, and he wore his rain boots that went almost to his kneecaps, and he wore a hat to protect him from any rain or any sun that might come out. He was ready. He had his mosquito spray on because that was one of Grandpa's complaints. There might be mosquitoes out there today. So every time Sam wanted to go to the pond, Grandpa never took him. So this time he showed up and he was ready from head with his hat all the way down to his tootsie toe feet with his big wader boots on. And Sam walked up and he had his handy dandy net in his hand and said, Grandpa, can we please go to the pond today? Grandpa looked at him, and he stood there in his coverall zipped all the way up, and he had his old wader boots on to go down to the barn, and he said, well, I guess we're going to have to go to the pond today. Oh, my goodness, you should have seen the dance that Sam did. He danced all around, and he jumped up and down, and he yelled, and he screamed, I get to go to the pond today, I get to go to the pond today. Until Grandma said, oh, my goodness, please take that boy to the pond. He is so loud. And so he and Grandpa put their boots back on, and they walked down to the field where the pond was. Well, he got a little nervous because Grandpa had talked about those snakes being out there before, and he talked about it could rain or it might be muddy. But on this day, it was a beautiful, glorious day. Grandpa had actually mowed the field so that there wasn't a lot of big grass around, and there weren't a lot of places where things could hide. And when they got down there to the pond, Sam spent the whole afternoon dipping his net down in the water, catching tadpoles and crawdads, and they looked at the duck's nest where the little duck eggs were just about ready to hatch. And then Sam's grandpa said, come here. He said, get down really low. And so they got down really low, really close to the water. And he said, now, Sam, I want you to look at something. And right there in the mud, you could see little tiny footprints. Do you know what had made those little tiny footprints in the sand? Right by the pond? In that mud and sand, there were little bitty tiny footprints made by a frog. And Sam's grandpa said, if you listen very closely, you'll hear the frogs. And they were ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. And he could hear. So Sam went looking around, and Grandpa said, if you're really careful, you might be able to catch some of those tadpoles and take them home and watch them develop into frogs. And he said, develop into frogs? What do you mean, Grandpa? He knew about tadpoles and he knew about frogs. He didn't know anything happened in between. So Sam's grandpa scooped up some tadpoles, just like I did this morning out of that pond, or out of that little ditch, and he put them in a jar. He didn't even know Grandpa had brought a jar. And he said, Sam, I want you to take these home and I want you to watch them. We'll have to feed them. You're going to have to feed them some mealworms or maybe some grasshoppers, some food that we can get, maybe, fish flakes or something like that. And we'll see if they grow into adult frogs. So Sam and his grandpa went back up to the house, and it was time to go home, and his grandpa handed him all the stuff to take home. And when they got home, they put the tadpoles in a big aquarium. They started to watch. And these tadpoles, they were just little. They had started out as little eggs with kind of a dot in the middle from the eye. And they had hatched already in the pond. But Sam watched as those little bitty teeny tadpoles swam around every day. And every day he would notice little changes in those tadpoles. One of the tadpoles started getting legs. And you could see little nubs, just itty bitty teeny tiny at the back of the tadpole. And it started to get legs. And his mom came in and said, what do you think that's called, Sam? Sam looked it up, and it was called a froglet. And then as the froglet began to grow and grow and grow and grow, Sam didn't want his brother and sister to look, but his mom let him. And she said, now, you need to share this experience with them. So Sam watched as his froglet went from a froglet with just little legs hanging off the back and still a tail to a full-grown frog. And it was just teeny tiny, about this big. Well, the next time Sam went back to Grandpa's pond, guess what he took with him? It was time to let his little frogs go. Sam was kind of sad because every day he had journaled about the frogs. He had written down what the frogs were going to do. But Grandpa had told him when he took the tadpoles, he had to take very good care of them. But when it was time to let them go, he had to bring them back out and let them go in the wild. Because that's what we have to do with wild animals and little critters. We can't just keep them forever. They're meant to be outside. So a couple of weeks later, after they had developed into frogs, Sam and his mom and his dad and his brother and sister went back to Grandma and Grandpa's house. Grandma sat on the front porch just snapping her beans. And Grandpa said, well, let's go down and put your frogs in the pond. So they went down and they put the frogs in a very careful place. And then from that point on, every time Sam went to Grandpa's house, Grandpa made sure that he had his boots and all of his stuff to go down to the pond so they could go and visit his frogs. And Sam thought of all kinds of stories of the things the frogs might be doing in the pond, the places they might be visiting, the friends the frogs had made with the turtles and the dragonflies, maybe even some good snakes that wouldn't bite them. And they'd be eating worms and flies and keeping the ecosystem right in the pond. So it's pretty cool to watch things develop and grow bigger. Have you ever been to a pond, boys and girls? Raise your hand if you have. That's a lot of you. Now, should you ever go to the pond by yourself? That's right. You always have to wait for an adult to go with you. You should not go by yourself. But it would be nice if you could find a little net, maybe even something from Mom's kitchen, Dad's kitchen, that you could scoop up, like a strainer, where the water would drain out and you could scoop up things from the pond. Now, some more exciting things that I've brought to today are some things that you might find at a pond. They weren't in the story, but we talked about those footprints, and sometimes footprints and things get left behind in water. This last summer, I went to Branson with my sister and my daughter and my niece, and we went walking up a stream. It wasn't a pond, but it was a stream, and we found lots of fossils. I'm trying to find the one. Oh, it's got something really cool in it. We found this one. We like to say it's our dinosaur tooth. I think it's probably just part of a claw or something, but it was shaped like that when we found it. We thought that was kind of cool. And then we also found this cool one, and it looks like there might be a bone right in the middle of it. We thought that was kind of a cool fossil too. So we found that in Branson, which is in Missouri, which isn't far from us. But in Oklahoma, you can find things at ponds also. There's a really cool pond in Claremore at the RSU Nature Reserve, and we went there also last summer. We were walking around and we were looking. This is something else I want to show you that I also found there. It's an arrowhead. It actually was carved out. So it's like probably from an ancient Native American or something arrowhead. So that was kind of cool. But if you want to find a really cool pond that's free to go and walk around and look, the RSU Nature Reserve at RSU campus has a really cool pond. Now, you probably can't take things from it like I did these fossils, but it's kind of cool because you can go walk around with your family, and most of the trails are paved and things. So that's kind of a cool place to go if you guys want to see a pond and the ecosystem working. Bet you would see some cool things out there, because we did. We saw dragonflies and all kinds of lilies growing. We did not do anything with our words yet today, so let's talk about some words. Let's say froglet. Can you say that? Froglet. Very good. That is a compound word. We put frog and let together to make froglet. We've also got tadpole, dragonfly. Good job. Excellent. So there are several compound words you can think of that go with the pond, with our pond activity. And before we go, I just want to show you that you can also make a pond in a jar. And I saw this on Pinterest. I would love to give out credit to whoever I saw it from, but I forgot. So I'm just going to show you kind of an easy way. I found some dirt in my backyard because, you know, we're not really supposed to go to the store for just anything. And usually the ponds are pretty muddy on the bottom, so you can put some dirt in there. And usually there's a few rocks in a pond, so you put some rocks on top of it. Kind of cool. Found those rocks in my garage. They were from somebody's aquarium at some point. And we might even need a big tall rock for a frog to take an afternoon siesta and dry out, or a turtle. And then I've also got a few leaves that could float in our water as well. Or maybe they might be planted like, they kind of look like lily pads. I found some 4-leaf clovers, and I thought, you know, those kind of look like lily pads. And then you could pour your water in. Now, mine got a little dirty when I poured it in, but after a little bit, it'll settle. And here's our pond. We've got it. Got our 4-leaf clover. Just kind of floated in there. Set it outside. See what might land in your pond. If your pond is big, you might even get some tadpoles there. Another idea is to make a frog life cycle. Start out with 1 where the eggs are. 2, draw a tadpole. 3, a pollywog. And 4, my frog is, I'm not a very good artist, but this is my frog. So anyway, lots of ideas of things you can do with ponds. If you happen to do something really cool with a pond, let me know. Put it on Storytime with Mrs. Duff. Go on there, show me all the cool things you find at a pond. But remember, boys and girls, don't go to a pond all by yourself, because for one, you want to share that experience with your mom or dad or older brother or sister or grandma or grandpa or somebody like that. But it also is not a real safe place to go by yourself. So anyway, I think that's pretty much all we have today. So before we go, I have a song. Do I have time for a song? Okay. 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a spotted log, waiting for the end of school. Wait, that's a little different than the one we usually sing, isn't it? Are we waiting for the end of school? We are waiting for the end of school. But today, if you sing that with me the last few years, the waiting for the end of school, we're going to change it just a little bit, because we're not waiting for the end of school at this point. We're just learning, and we're going, and summer will be here before we know it. Next week will be our last week together. 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a spotted log, eating some most delicious bugs, yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there were no green speckled frogs, glub, glub. Were there none? There were still 4. 4 green and speckled frogs sat on a spotted log, eating some most delicious bugs, yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there were 3 green speckled frogs, glub, glub. 3 green and speckled frogs sat on a spotted log, eating some most delicious bugs, yum, yum. One jumped into the pool where it was nice and cool. Now there was only 1. Goodbye. You guys have a good week. Love you. See you next week.